Hi everybody, I have one more video to share, and this is a compilation of several bits of pieces that I just thought might be good to know as you go throughout the school year. So this is miscellaneous information related to speech and language that I think might be helpful this next school year. Now, some of the screens will have information all over the screen, so I'm going to get out of the picture and continue to present. Okay, first of all, here's a question that you might have. I think the student has a speech and language problem. What should I do? Okay, so you do want to go ahead and follow MTSS guidelines just like you would if you had a specific academic concern. You do want to request a screening, and I'm going to show you that form on the next slide. When you request this screening, you want to get a hearing and vision screening from the nurse as well. If the student has one that is recent, within maybe 6 to 9 months, you can get a copy. If not, you need to ask the nurse to do a new screening, and I'll show you that on the next slide. Once you get the consent to screen back and a cleared hearing and vision screening form back, then give it to me. Please don't give me just the screening form, and please don't give me just the hearing and vision form. I need both. And if I don't get them both at the same time, chances are I'm going to put them in a file and forget that they're there. So when I have both of these, they go into a different file, and that file tells me that's something that I need to do. They go in my to-do list. So if I don't get these together, the process is going to be slowed down. Also, when you get both forms, please put them in my box, but not in a folder in my box. Just lay them on top in my mailbox. And pretty please avoid these. Please don't ask me to just come and listen to a student and tell you what I think, because what I think may not be what's actually going on. A formal screening would be much better and much more accurate than me just telling you what I think. Also, I will probably forget to do that, or it's going to go to the bottom of my list of things to do because I put things in order of priority, which ones have deadlines, which ones have parent consent. And so if you just ask me to come and listen to a student, it's going to take me a lot longer to get to them because they have to go down at the bottom of my list of things to do. Also, please don't give me the signed screening consent without the completed hearing and vision screening form, because again, it's going to be put in another file in my office where I'm likely to just forget about it because I need to have the whole packet before I can do anything with it. Okay, so I'm going to show you what the screening form looks like, and I keep these in my mailbox in a folder at work. So if you need one of these, you can get one out of my mailbox. They're in a folder. So you fill out the top part. It's pretty self-explanatory, but this part right here where it says hearing and vision, you either need to check that it's attached, that a past hearing and vision screening form less than 1 year old is attached to this form, or you need to check that a hearing and vision screening is needed. And if that is selected, you'll need to give a copy of this form to the nurse before you give it to me so that the nurse can do the hearing and vision screening. After you get the hearing and vision screening form back from the nurse, and it does need to be passed, both of those need to be passed, then you can give me a copy of this form and the past hearing and vision screening. You can just staple them together and put it in my box. So this is what the form looks like. Again, it's because I'm going to forget that that needs to be done if I don't have both of them together, because I can't do anything with just one or the other. I have to have both before I can screen. Okay. So here's something that comes up quite frequently. A student has a behavior problem. Is it because of a speech and language impairment? Well, these are some things to consider. How old is the student? So you look at this picture of this kid having a tantrum, and they're little. They probably can't talk very much. They probably cannot express themselves any of the time very much. And so the only way they can express themselves is to have a tantrum of sorts. They don't have the language yet. This student probably cannot talk very well. But look at this kid. He's much older. This kid can talk. This kid can tell you what he wants, what he needs. He can tell you no or that he is upset. He can ask questions. He can make comments. So, all throughout the school day, he is able to communicate. But in this behavioral instance, he is not communicating, or he's not communicating appropriately. But that doesn't mean he has a language problem. His inappropriate behavior may be inappropriate communication, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't have the language skills. If a child is able to express themselves in other situations, then chances are that behavior is not because they have a language problem. It might be a communication problem, but not a language problem. If they're a little kid, like pre-K and younger, it might be a language problem. But once they're older, there's probably something else going on, not language. Okay, I want to continue on about behavior. The Georgia DOE regulation says, because children who have communication difficulties do not necessarily have speech or language impairments, the speech language program may not be the appropriate service delivery model to adequately meet the child's educational needs. And I'm specifically showing you this as it relates to behavior. So not all students with behavior issues are eligible for special education. Their behavior may be learned. Maybe they've learned that when they engage in this inappropriate behavior, they get what they want. It's effective. Maybe their home environment, maybe the way their parents express their emotions is the same way that the child is expressing their emotions. Maybe there's a mental health issue. Maybe it's a conduct disorder, an oppositional defiant or I don't even know if you'd call it a disorder. I guess it is disorder, oppositional defiant. But those issues are not special education eligible issues. So speech language pathologists in these cases, we're not behavior or social emotional experts, so we're probably not the best people to be addressing these issues. Your school counselor, behavior interventionist, general education interventions, social emotional learning curriculum, the family, those are all people on a team that would most likely be able to address a student's behavior issues. So, for example, a student may have, let's just say, quote unquote, a meltdown when they are asked to do something they don't want to do. And it's not because they can't say, I don't want to do this. It may be because, and that would be language. You know, they could say, they have the ability to say, I don't want to do this. It may be because they've learned at home, if they don't want to do something, if they pitch a fit, they'll get out of it. And so they've learned, well, that's really effective. So I'm going to keep doing that. Maybe they see that behavior at home. Maybe it works for one of their parents. And so they just do that because that's what's natural to do. So you have to kind of look like, try to understand, why is the child doing what they're doing? Now, it may be related to a social, emotional issue, but again, that would be something that the counselor may want to go over with them and help them learn to express those emotions. So it's a communication issue, but not necessarily a language issue. Okay, here's the next question you may have. My student can't say their R sounds or their S sound or a TH sound, or whatever sound should I refer? So, questions to ask yourself. They can't say their R sound, and so how are you going to finish that sentence? What is the negative educational impact? They can't say their R sounds, and so I can't understand them, and neither can their peers. So you want to ask yourself, can you understand them anyway? Some kids can't say their R sounds, but you still know what they're saying. It's distorted, but you still understand them. You also want to ask yourself, how old are they? If they're in pre-K, there are certain sounds that it's okay that they don't say them okay, that they don't say them correctly. If they're in 5th grade and they can't say their R sounds, then I would go back and ask this question again. And so if they're in 5th grade and they can't say their R sounds, but they've made it to 5th grade, I'm going to question whether there's any negative educational impact. And also in one of my other videos, I talked about dialect. So we have to consider whether it's just a dialectical difference. Kids are not eligible for speech language impaired if their errors are developmentally appropriate, like a pre-K child who can't say their R sounds. If it's a single sound error, if there's just one sound they can't say, that's not, and you can't be eligible for just one sound. If it's just in a specific word, like they say lello instead of yellow, but they can say yes and you. So they can say the Y sound, but they just don't say it for yellow. Errors that don't have negative educational impact, and inconsistent or situational errors. So sometimes they make that error, but not all the time. Those would not be eligible. So these are some things to consider. Sometimes kids are not eligible, and it may not always be clear because the meetings go so fast. So you might want to know why weren't they eligible? Well, these are 3 things that have to be included in eligibility for speech and language. 1, they have to have an impairment, and that has to come through an evaluation by a speech language pathologist. The team has to have a speech language pathologist on the team in order to determine this. Second, that impairment has to have a negative educational impact, and we have to have some evidence of that. And third, they have to require specialized services to access the curriculum, not to make A's in the curriculum, not to make B's in the curriculum, just to have access to it. So some possibilities could be that the student's skills were within normal limits. They may not be average, they may be below average, but they don't fall to the level of an impairment. Second, it could be that they do have an impairment, but there's no negative educational impact. And that would be like for a student who can't say their R's, for example, but you can still understand everything they say. It's not negatively impacting them. And then third, they do have an impairment. There is a negative educational impact, but specialized intervention is not warranted or needed or shown to have benefit for access to the curriculum. So it could be that they've received years and years and years of therapy and there's been no improvement. So there's no known benefit to this program. Or it could be that general education interventions are fine for them. They don't really need anything specialized. So a statement down here at the bottom to sum that up is that school-based speech language impaired program is not to help students reach their potential or even for making their skills average. Is to give them access to the curriculum. Okay, here's a myth. Sometimes I hear people say, let's get them into speech. That will open the door to special education. Well, that's a myth. The truth is that speech language impaired is special education already. And also, being in the speech language impaired program doesn't change anything about eligibility for other programs. The student will still have to go through MTSS. They'll still have to have interventions. Progress monitoring data will still have to be collected. They'll still have to meet eligibility requirements for any other program. So it doesn't change anything about other needs. Another myth is let's wait to refer them. Please don't wait. Early intervention is vital. Refer early. Pre-K, kindergarten, or 1st grade is best. If you want them to make functional improvements, they need to receive their interventions early. It becomes much, much harder the older a student is because they've missed so much information. It's going to be much harder to build that information. So referring a student in 3rd through 5th grades is really too late. Now, you should still do it if they need it, but the interventions that we provide are going to end up being more compensatory and trying to teach them strategies than actually building up their underlying language skills, because it's really just too late. We've got to make it so that they can access their curriculum. So we really just can't build up all of those background information concepts that they need. Oops. Hold on. Okay, oh, that was it. All right, guys, thanks for listening to this. I hope you're having a great day, and let me get out of this video. Please ask me for any other questions, or if any of this doesn't make sense, I will be glad to talk to you about it. Thanks. Bye.